Think about the last time you were grinding up a brutal steep hill on a bike, or maybe, pushing through the final reps of a really heavy squat.
Right, where your lungs are absolutely burning and your heart is just pounding in your ears.
Exactly. And eventually your legs just give out. We usually process that physical failure as like a simple equation, right? Like you used all your available engine and the engine just maxed out.
Yeah, I mean, it makes intuitive sense. If you pedal a bike with both legs as hard as you physically can, you're generating your absolute maximum local power.
Right. But when you actually measure the biomechanics at an elite level, that whole equation just shatters. Because today, in this deep dive, we're looking at a physiological reality that fundamentally redefines how we understand our physical limits.
It really does. It's fascinating because if you test the maximum power of one leg working completely alone, it actually produces significantly more power per leg than when both legs are working together.
Which is wild. You're essentially getting more horsepower out of a single piston, when you force the other ones to shut down.
Exactly. And the reason why involves this massive kind of hidden protective mechanism that's operating inside your central nervous system right now.
Yeah, so we're going to map out exactly how that protective mechanism works. It's a phenomenon known in sports science as the cardiac bottleneck.
We'll also explore how isolating your muscles radically alters your systemic blood flow.
And we'll dig into the unforgiving, yet honestly fascinating structural ways your arteries age, even if you've been a relentless endurance athlete your entire life.
Yeah, that part is a bit of a reality check. But to anchor all of this, we're drawing on a highly specific, targeted piece of research that measures this whole phenomenon down to the level of the individual artery.
Right, and the oxygen saturation inside the muscle tissue itself.
Yeah.
So we're diving into a 2024 paper published in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine.
The title is a bit of a mouthful, but it lays out the mission perfectly.
Oh, totally. Its title, The Improvement in Exercise Performance During Reduced Muscle Mass Exercise, is associated with an increase in femoral blood flow in older and younger endurance-trained athletes.
Right. Authored by Toni Haddad, Angela L. Spence, Jeremiah Peiffer, Gregory and Blain, Jeanick Brisswalter, and Chris R. Abbiss.
What makes this paper so compelling for anyone, interested in human performance is that Haddad and the team didn't just want to prove that one leg outperforms two.
Yeah, they actually wanted to measure the underlying fluid dynamics and the cellular metabolism driving that difference in real time and across different stages of the human lifespan.
So let's start with this cardiac bottleneck thing, because to understand why one isolated leg can generate so much power, we actually have to stop looking at the leg.
Right, you have to start looking at the heart and the brain.
Exactly. When you're doing a massive full-body exercise like sprinting on a bike with both legs, your muscle tissue is just rapidly depleting its local oxygen stores.
Yeah.
So those muscles start screaming for more blood.
And local metabolites, things like adenosine, potassium ions, and lactate, they start accumulating in the muscle tissue.
Okay.
And these byproducts act as these powerful chemical signals that tell the smooth muscles surrounding your local blood vessels to relax.
So the vessels open up wide to let as much oxygen-rich blood in as possible, right?
Exactly. This is known as vascular conductance, but this creates an immediate life-threatening physics problem for your body.
Wait, life-threatening? Because of the sheer volume of the pipes opening up all at once.
Yes. Think about it. You have a massive amount of muscle mass in your lower body. If all the capillary beds and blood vessels in both of your legs fully dilated to their absolute maximum capacity at the exact same time,
The pressure would just drop.
completely, the total space inside your vascular system would suddenly exceed the volume of blood you actually have. Your mean arterial pressure would absolutely crash.
Wow. Which means the fluid pressure drops so low that the system can't pump blood vertically against gravity anymore.
Right, and if your pressure plummets, your brain doesn't get oxygen, and you literally pass out on the bike.
Okay, so obviously your body refuses to let you do that.
Exactly. You have these baroreceptors. They're tiny pressure sensors located in your carotid arteries and your aortic arch.
Like little internal alarms.
Basically, yeah. The millisecond they detect systemic blood pressure dropping during intense full-body exercise, they send a panic signal to your brainstem. And the brain responds by ramping up sympathetic nervous system activity.
So it floods the system with norepinephrine.
Yes. And that norepinephrine binds to alpha-adrenergic receptors on those exact same blood vessels in your legs, forcing them to constrict.
Oh, I see. So the local muscle is screaming, open up, I need oxygen. But the central nervous system is overriding it.
Precisely. It's clamping down on the vessels to maintain that systemic pressure. The heart has hit its maximum cardiac output limit, so the brain just throttles the delivery.
That's crazy. So the limitation isn't actually your legs. I mean, your legs could physically do more work. Your heart and your brain are just cutting the fuel line to keep you conscious.
That is the cardiac bottleneck in a nutshell.
Wow. Which brings the protocol in Haddad's study into really sharp focus. So the researchers took 24 highly trained endurance athletes and put them through these brutal cycling intervals.
Yeah, 2 sets of 3-minute maximal self-paced efforts.
Right, but they had them perform the test normally first, using both legs, and then they compared it to a single leg trial, where the non-working leg rested on a specialized counterweight system.
And while the athletes were redlining, just going all out, the researchers were using Doppler ultrasound on the femoral artery.
That's the massive pipe feeding the leg, right?
Exactly. They use it to calculate the exact volume and velocity of blood rushing into the tissue.
And the numbers they pulled are just staggering. During the single-leg cycling, the athletes elicited a significantly greater power output.
Oh, yeah.
If you combine the maximum power of the right leg working alone plus the left leg working alone, it averaged 295 watts.
Right.
But when those exact same athletes cycled with both legs simultaneously, their total average was only 265 watts.
Which is huge. A 30-watt difference is monumental at an elite level. That's the difference between winning a race and not even making the podium.
Absolutely. And the Doppler ultrasound data explains the mechanism so perfectly. During the double-leg cycling, the peak femoral blood flow hovered around 1,330 milliliters per minute.
Right.
But when they switched to single-leg cycling, the blood flow to that single working limb just shot up to roughly 1,749 milliliters per minute.
Yeah, you are seeing the physical manifestation of the central governor just turning off.
It totally makes me think of like a household water pump trying to feed an entire irrigation system.
That's a great way to look at it.
Like if you have the sprinklers going full blast in the front yard, the backyard, and the side garden all at once, the central pump just can't maintain the pressure. Every sprinkler just spits out this weak trickle.
Exactly. But if you walk over to the manifold and completely shut off the valves to the backyard and the side garden, you haven't actually changed the capacity of the central pump.
Right, you've just reduced the total volume of the open system.
Yes. So that one remaining hose in the front yard doesn't just get a normal flow. The dynamic pressure skyrockets, and it gets a massive, localized blast of water.
And that is exactly what is happening in the single-leg protocol here. By resting one leg, you reduce the total active muscle mass. So the threat of a systemic blood pressure drop completely vanishes.
Yep. The baroreceptors don't trigger the alarm, the brain doesn't flood the system with norepinephrine, and that peripheral vasoconstriction just never happens.
So the local blood flow is finally allowed to match the local metabolic demand.
Linearly scaling up with the exercise intensity, yes. You completely bypass the systemic bottleneck to see what the local muscle tissue is truly capable of when it's fully fueled.
It's basically a biological hack.
Yeah.
But what makes this deep dive so interesting is that the researchers weren't just testing the hack itself. They were testing how the hardware holds up over time.
Right, the aging factor. They split those 24 athletes into 2 distinct demographic groups. You had older athletes over the age of 60 and younger athletes under the age of 40.
And if you're listening to this and wondering if they just compared, like, fit young kids to elderly people who sit on the couch all day, they did not.
No, not at all. This is a really crucial element of the study's design. Both groups were required to be highly trained.
Right.
We're talking actively exercising 5 or more hours a week for a minimum of 5 years.
So they successfully isolated the variable of aging from the variable of sedentariness. We are looking at the pure physiological impact of time on a really well-maintained human engine.
And the data reveals a very unforgiving structural reality. Despite decades of intense, consistent cardiovascular training, the older athletes had a significantly lower peak femoral blood flow compared to the younger group.
Okay, lay the numbers on us.
So the over 60 athletes peaked at about 1,355 milliliters per minute, while the under 40 group hit 1,765 milliliters per minute.
Wow.
Yeah, that is roughly a 30% reduction in maximum blood delivery.
Wait, hold on. Let me push back on this because that feels incredibly unfair.
I know it does.
For anyone out there who spends, 10 hours a week on a bike or running miles before dawn, we are constantly sold the idea that rigorous endurance exercise keeps you biologically young.
Right.
Like exercise is supposed to be the magic bullet for vascular health. Why doesn't a lifetime of training protect the femoral artery from aging?
It is a frustrating reality, I admit, but it requires us to separate local muscular adaptations from central vascular aging.
Oh, unpack that for me.
Well, when you train relentlessly for decades, your local muscles adapt beautifully. You trigger angiogenesis, building dense new capillary networks within the muscle tissue itself.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and your mitochondria become larger and more efficient. That local machinery stays incredibly young.
But the central pipes delivering the blood to those capillaries don't get that same immunity.
Sadly, they don't. The primary conduit arteries, like the aorta and the femoral artery, they undergo structural and functional changes that exercise can certainly slow down, but it cannot stop entirely.
Like what kind of structural changes?
As you age, the collagen fibers in the arterial walls begin to cross-link, largely due to things like advanced glycation end products.
Okay.
The elastin fibers degrade, the pipe just physically stiffens.
So it literally loses its mechanical ability to stretch and dilate, no matter how strong the heart is pushing.
Exactly. And it's not just mechanical, it's chemical too. Aging endothelial cells, the inner lining of the blood vessels, they experience a reduction in the bioavailability of nitric oxide.
And nitric oxide is the signal, right?
Right. It's the primary molecule that signals the smooth muscle to relax. Combine that with the fact that sympathetic nervous system activity naturally increases as we age, meaning your baseline state becomes slightly more vasoconstricted.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So you just end up with a structurally smaller, stiffer pipe
Yeah.
that literally cannot carry the same absolute volume of fluid as a 30-year-old pipe.
Yeah. It is a tough biological pill to swallow. All that cardio can't fully pause the biological clock on arterial elasticity.
Oh, that's depressing.
It is, but wait. The data provides a really profound silver lining here.
Okay, I need some good news.
While the absolute peak blood flow was lower for the older athletes, the relative mechanism of the single-leg hack remained entirely intact.
Oh, really?
Yes. Both groups experienced almost the exact same percentage increase in blood flow when they switched from 2 legs to 1.
So a rising tide still lifts the older boat, even if the boat's hull is a little weathered.
That's a perfect way to phrase it. The older athletes' peak blood flow during single-leg cycling was roughly 132% of their double-leg blood flow. The younger athletes saw a 130% increase.
Oh, wow. That's practically identical.
Yep. The brain's regulatory mechanisms, the bypassing of the cardiac bottleneck, all of that functions flawlessly at 65 years old. You are still maximizing whatever capacity remains in your vascular system.
Okay, that is super cool. So we know we can force a massive surge of blood into an isolated muscle, completely regardless of age. But that opens up an even more complex physiological question. If we open the floodgates and rush all this extra oxygen down into the leg, what actually happens when it reaches the cellular level? Like, how does the muscle process the surge?
Right, and to figure that out, the researchers used a technology called near-infrared spectroscopy, or NIRS.
Yeah, they use a MOXIE monitor, placing it directly on the vastus lateralis. That's the massive quad muscle that drives the downward pedal stroke.
NIRS is just an incredible tool. It essentially shoots harmless near-infrared light through the skin and the subcutaneous fat deep down into the microvasculature of the muscle.
Neat.
And because oxygenated hemoglobin and deoxygenated hemoglobin absorb near-infrared light at different wavelengths, the sensor can continuously calculate the exact percentage of oxygen currently sitting inside the muscle capillaries.
Which is the SMO2, right?
Yes, as well as the total volume of hemoglobin, the THB.
It basically gives you a live feed of cellular respiration. Like you can watch the muscle eating the oxygen in real time.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And the findings here totally flip our conventional logic upside down. Because, you would assume that since the single leg is working so much harder, generating 30 more watts of power, it would be burning through oxygen aggressively, leaving the local tissue totally depleted.
Right, that's what you think.
But the NIRS data showed the exact opposite. Muscle oxygenation levels were actually higher during single leg cycling compared to double leg cycling.
I know, it seems like a contradiction at first glance. Higher mechanical power, massive arterial blood flow, but the muscle is leaving more oxygen behind in the venous blood. The fractional extraction of oxygen actually goes down.
I mean, how does that even work? If we force the hose on full blast and the tissue is working harder than ever, why is it leaving fuel on the table? Is the blood just, rushing past the capillary beds too fast for the cells to grab the oxygen molecules?
Good question, but it's not necessarily an issue of transit time. It's actually an issue of processing speed. What we are seeing here is the muscle hitting what we call the mitochondrial ceiling. The mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cells, and the chemical reactions they use to convert oxygen into ATP are driven by specific enzymes, like cytochrome C oxidase.
And those enzymes must have a hard physical limit on how fast they can work.
Exactly. They have a maximum turnover rate. During standard double-leg cycling, the muscle is relatively starved for oxygen because, remember, the brain is throttling the femoral artery.
Right.
So the mitochondria are grabbing every single molecule of oxygen they can get their hands on, driving those SMO2 levels way, way down.
They're essentially scraping the bottom of the barrel.
But during single-leg cycling, the vascular floodgates open up. The oxygen delivery is so overwhelming that the local metabolic machinery literally saturates.
Wow.
The enzymes in the electron transport chain are working at 100% maximum capacity, generating peak local power, and they simply cannot accept any more electrons to reduce the oxygen. So the bottleneck shifts from the heart
to the mitochondria.
Exactly.
So the local tissue finally gets everything it ever wanted. It maxes out its own processing speed, and the excess oxygen just continues floating in the blood.
Yep. And what's really beautiful about the body's design is how it responds to this state. The study found strong correlations between peak blood flow and power output.
Okay, meaning what?
Meaning the vascular system regulates blood delivery perfectly to meet metabolic demand right up to that enzymatic limit. It doesn't waste cardiac energy pumping extra blood once the mitochondria have reached their ceiling. The system finds its true local maximum and just plateaus.
It's kind of like testing a sports car. For years, you've only been allowed to drive it in heavy city traffic, where you're constantly forced to ride the brakes.
Oh, I like it.
And then in this study, they finally took the car to a closed salt flat, held the throttle down, and discovered the absolute top speed of the engine block itself.
That is spot on. And realizing that your muscles have a higher top speed than your cardiovascular system allows them to use. That has major implications for how anyone structures their physical training.
Which is precisely the practical application of this entire deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
If you're listening and you're tracking your own VO2 max, prepping for a triathlon, or, just trying to maintain robust metabolic health as you age, this data should probably change your routine.
Absolutely. Think about it. If your entire training regimen consists only of full-body, large muscle mass exercises, running, rowing, double leg, heavy squats, you are constantly redlining your central nervous system and your heart.
Right.
You accumulate massive central fatigue, and your brain forces you to stop long before your individual leg muscles have actually reached their structural or mitochondrial limits.
But if you strategically incorporate isolated exercises, like intense single-leg cycling intervals, heavy single-leg presses, or Bulgarian split squats, you bypass the baroreceptors.
Exactly. You slip right past the central governor. You can push the local muscle fibers and those mitochondrial enzymes to their absolute breaking point,
forcing deeper local adaptations, but without redlining your heart and lungs to that same degree.
It is an incredibly powerful strategy, and it's particularly important for older athletes. Because as we discussed earlier, your central conduit arteries will inevitably stiffen and shrink with time.
Right, the aging pipes.
But by isolating the muscle, you can still maximize the flow through those aging pipes, ensuring your local mitochondrial health remains as robust and youthful as possible. You essentially maintain tissue function by training around the central decline.
It completely redefines what a single-leg workout actually is. I mean, it's not just about correcting strength imbalances anymore. It's a physiological key to unlocking a hidden biological ceiling.
It really is.
Which leaves a lingering and honestly slightly provocative thought for you to chew on as you go about your day. We've just mapped out how our individual muscles possess a latent mitochondrial ceiling, this reservoir of absolute power that our brain and our heart actively prevent us from using during normal, full-body movement.
Right. It's a systemic preservation mechanism that keeps us safe, but it masks our true local potential.
Exactly. So if our legs are secretly capable of so much more than our central governor allows, what other hidden physical or even cognitive capacities are locked away inside us?
That's a deep question.
What other daily limits are we experiencing that aren't actually true limits of our tissues, but merely protective constraints imposed by our nervous system to keep the whole machine running safely? It really makes you wonder what the human body could truly achieve if we understood how to safely rewrite the central governor's code.
We are only just beginning to scratch the surface of that frontier in sports science.
We really are. And if you want to explore the mechanics of that frontier for yourself, I highly encourage you to track down and read the full article by Haddad and colleagues in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine.
Yeah, seeing the actual data charts mapping the femoral blood flow against the MOXIE monitor oxygenation readings offers a really profound look into the hidden limits of our own biology.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
It's well worth your time to dive into their methodology.
The precision of their measurements really brings the reality of the cardiac bottleneck into clear view.
It really does. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the human machine. Be sure to follow the channel and turn on your notifications so you don't miss our upcoming deep dives into the absolute cutting edge of human performance science. Keep questioning your limits, and we will see you next time.